Babysitters, what were the weirdest rules parents asked you to follow? Story 1. When I was 14, the neighbors asked me to come for an interview as a babysitter. They were on a couch, and I was sitting on the opposite couch. Every time I looked at the dad, he would shift his eyes down to his lap. Eventually, I also looked down on his lap. He was wearing very short shorts with no underwear, and his dong hanging out against his leg. Needless to say, I declined the offer. I found another post about him. I was somewhere between 12 and 14 when this all went down. I may have been younger. This was almost 20 years ago. When I was about 12 years old, the next-door neighbor's husband started beating the crap out of her in the middle of the night, kicked her out of the house, then was holding the baby hostage. I woke up to screaming and crying coming from the bathroom as my mom and the neighbor lady hid. "Let me in, Mom," I screamed, terrified. "He's not going to hurt you. You're safe." Some crap along those lines. Mom won't let me in the bathroom. Crazy boyfriend now has broken a window and says he's going to come in and end our lives. We lived in a crap butt neighborhood, and this was in the 80s. The police said this was a domestic dispute and wasn't a priority unless we knew the guy had a gun. For a good 20 minutes, we listened to the guy hollering that he was going to end his own life, end the baby's life, end our lives. Mom still wouldn't let me and my brother, who was now awake, into the bathroom, the only door with a lock. I would also like to point out that this prickwad had also, at one point, flashed his dong at me and told me I looked like I was built for doing it. Remember, I was 12 years old. Anyway, I finally snuck into the dining room, which is where the broken window was, and also where the phone was. We didn't have a cordless guy. This was the 80s. I called the police and lied. I told him I heard a gun go off, and now the baby wasn't crying. 3 more minutes and there was a SWAT team on our street. That was one of the most terrifying moments in my life. Story 2. Babysat for a woman who knew my mom. She had 2 kids, both acted like feral animals, kicked and bit me very hard when I told them no. She had her TV behind a plexiglass thing because they keep breaking TVs. She had locks on the outside of the bedroom door and crib setup that essentially locked the younger kid, 3 or 4 years old, into her crib. It had a top that you pulled down and padlocked to the sides. It was absolutely horrific. The kids screamed bloody murder when I tried to get them to listen. Their grandma, who lived next door, came over. Did she come over to help me out? No, she gave these kids cookies and crap-talked me for not being able to control them. Like it's my fault that her grandkids act like animals, and not the fact that their mother apparently treats them like animals, and she herself gives them treats when they have temper tantrums, instead of putting them in timeout like a normal person. Their mom promised to be back by 9, important because I was in high school. She wasn't back until 2 a.m., and that was after I started calling all the bars to find her. I was planning to eat dinner afterwards, so I was starving. I called my mom, and she ordered delivery for me. The grandmother got ticked off that she didn't order enough for the kids too, and guilted me into sharing it. The mom finally came home, paid me $10 for 10 hours of babysitting, even though we agreed on $20 for 5 hours, and proceeded to crap talk me next time she went out, saying I was lazy and a bad babysitter. She said I should have beat her kids and locked them in the bedroom when they started acting up. My mom and I have contacted CPS afterwards a couple of times. Unfortunately, nothing came of it. Where I live, they give people 24-hour notice before inspecting a house, so I'm sure she was able to hide whatever, or they just gave her a warning. I don't know. I never babysat there again. Even $20 for 5 hours with well-behaved kids would have been way too little. Sounds like truly horrible people who just wanted to use you. Story 3. Not a rule, as I only went there once, but a very odd request. I used to work housekeeping at a hospital. A doctor that was frequently on the floor that I worked on asked me if I could watch his kids on Saturdays. He had 3 toddlers, ages 2, 3, and 4. His wife didn't work, but wanted time to go shopping and get her hair done and her nails too. I totally understand, as my son was 4. I was also allowed to bring him. I get there early as the doctor is getting ready to leave. He says he's cooking breakfast, and while he gets the kids fed and dressed, could I help change his wife's tampon? She had drunk a lot the night before and was completely passed out and was leaking and messing up their sheets. He's a doctor. I told him I should work for someone more than a few minutes before I go rummaging in their private parts, and that I would tend to the kids if he tended to his wife. What I really wanted to do was leave, but the kids would be home alone with their hungover mother, so I chose to finish cooking and stay. He went upstairs and sent the kids to the kitchen, where I was putting food on plates. After a little while, he popped his head in and said it was a short day, he was done upstairs, and he was leaving. I never met the wife. He came home at noon, gave me $100, and I never spoke to him again. This is the weirdest thing I've ever heard. Story 4. I babysat my 4 cousins once, aged maybe 8 to 12. One night they all asked for me to read a story, so I happily obliged. When I told my aunt, she replied, "They're much too old for that. Why did you do it?" Well, if the kids want a story, I'll read them a story. Why the heck not? I've read stories to my 35-plus-year-old husband before. In the car, though, not before bedtime. My aunt isn't evil and isn't someone who would put her kids in front of some trashy reality show. They're an upper-middle-class, well-educated family. In fact, my uncle collects amazing, mostly European graphic novels, and the kids have always had access to culture, books, museums, concerts. I think my aunt just meant something like, "You didn't have to do that," and "How odd of them." She doesn't have any filter and is usually quite blunt. Maybe the kids never asked her to read to them? Then again, yeah, in the end, it just sounded wrong. But chill. Poor kids, they probably were starving for attention. My mom was an elementary school teacher. When my kids were young and she'd come to visit, I'd always go in the room and listen when she read to them. There's something really soothing about having someone read to you. Story 5. When I was about 14, some friends of my parents asked me to babysit their 9 or 10-year-old sons who wanted a boy babysitter. When I got to their house, the mom told me that her son loved poached eggs and asked me to make him a poached egg on toast for dinner. She quickly explained to me how to make it, as if it were something really simple and easy. Later that night, after wasting half the eggs in a hopeless effort to make a poached egg, I asked the kid if he liked scrambled eggs. He said he loved scrambled eggs and ate them without complaint. When the parents came home, I apologized for using up their eggs. They laughed and seemed to appreciate the effort, although the mom explained it again and insisted that it was really simple. I'm almost 40 now, and I still suck at making poached eggs, and it cracks me up that the mom thought a 14-year-old should be able to whip one up based on a few instructions. On the other hand, as a parent, I appreciate the heck out of that kid. It's nice to see that the mother didn't scream at you over this, like most of these other stories. Still a bit weird, but no real harm done. Story 6. I never really had any rules to follow, but I did have one terrible mother. The mom asked me to babysit her 3 kids overnight. As I was in high school, I couldn't do it, so she said she could be back by 9 p.m. I figured it was fine and let my mom know, even though they only lived a few houses away. The kids were great. We played around, watched a movie, I fed them, and put them to bed. 9 p.m. rolled around, and the mom was nowhere to be found. She hadn't left a number to reach her, and I figured she was just running behind. I cleaned up and watched some TV while waiting for her. 10 p.m. hits. Not home. 11 p.m. Nope. Finally, at around 12 a.m., I called my mom. I explained what's up, that I'm tired and I have school in the morning, etc. She agrees to come and stay away from the house with the kids till their mom shows up. Turns out she didn't come home till around 10 a.m. the next morning, long after my mom had called CPS. She gave my mom $20 for 16 hours of babysitting. None of the neighborhood kids were allowed to babysit for her after that. Story 7. The mother asked me to stop by the house to meet her 2-year-old son a week before I was supposed to babysit him for the first time. I pulled up to the house and saw that the young boy was standing at the glass front door with a t-shirt on and nothing else. I went in and must have given the child a strange look because the mom started to explain that her son doesn't like to wear pants, so they let him run around pantsless with no diaper on, though he isn't potty trained. I told her that this made me uncomfortable and asked if I could put pants on him when I was watching him, and she got upset with me and said they don't like to make their 2-year-old son do anything he doesn't like to do, so they let him run around without pants on, which unfortunately means he goes to the bathroom on the floor since he won't wear a diaper and he isn't potty trained. Not a bad idea to meet the parents and kid first, though. Story 8. The 3-year-old daughter had to watch this VHS tape of a live Fleetwood Mac concert before bed. I was like, okay, cute, that's adorable. 3-year-olds love the weirdest things. She's so quirky and this will be fun. But she didn't love it. She always wanted to watch Land Before Time instead. But it was always on the note left for me, like pager number, pediatrician, chicken soup for dinner is in the fridge, and watch Fleetwood Mac at 6:30 before bed. Obviously, the family eventually found out I wasn't making her watch it, as I had no reason to believe it was a secret. They were clearly upset by this, and I was never called back to babysit, so that was weird. Should have told them lies, sweet little lies. Wasn't a rule, but on my first day, they sent over an adult male friend of theirs who asked to come in. I said no and was then told I was being tested and I had passed. Story 9. The mom had me put her kids in their car seats and sit in the driveway with all the car doors open while she just hung out inside the house. 5 hours of me standing in the driveway watching them sit inside their car. Never returned. Never returned. I never returned to babysit for her again. Not that the mother mysteriously disappeared. I didn't take them somewhere, as she specifically asked me to just sit in the driveway with them. I also didn't have my driver's license yet, so I couldn't have taken them anywhere, even if I wanted to. The kids were twins who were 4 years old, I think. They were weirdly well behaved, and didn't complain about what we were doing. To this day, I have no idea what she was doing inside, or why she didn't just let them play in the yard. I'm just as confused as you are. That's called pretending you don't have kids. Story 10. Refused to let their kids eat raw veggies for absolutely no reason. They never told me this, so I gave the kids ages 5 to 7 raw, washed, and cut broccoli with some ranch for a snack. They were happily eating as the mom was getting ready for a party. She walked by, saw the kids eating the broccoli, took it from them, microwaved it, and said they like it much better this way. The kids did not like it better, and even thought it was weird. I was then instructed to never give them raw veggies. I could understand if they were toddlers still learning to chew, but these kids were plenty old enough to chew broccoli florets without choking. Mom probably has a germ thing. I have run into several people who don't trust raw veggies that can be cooked, which makes no sense since they will eat raw fruit. Story 11. Hippie family, the 2-year-old had no bedtime and no rules. She can eat what she wants, no bedtime, and if she falls asleep, leave her wherever she crashed. The parents came home at 2:30 to a toddler eating chocolate cake on the couch with her preferred American Pickers on TV. That's fine, apparently. 6 months later, the mom is very pregnant and asks that when the baby is born, if I could wrangle the toddler while the mom gives birth in a bathtub at home. The 2-year-old was to be in the room, watching, while I explained what's happening. I left that evening when the parents came home, fried chicken in the toddler's hand, keeping up with the Kardashians on TV, and denied their next request to come sit. As a 20-year-old, I wasn't prepared to see the mess of someone else's home birth. Story 12. I used to babysit for this family when I was in high school in the 80s, and they had no books or reading material of any kind, except that there would usually be like 2 sections of the Wall Street Journal and a running magazine lying around. No books. Anyway, once I went over there and the mom told me like 9 times, begged me not to eat the box of Nilla wafers that was in the cupboard because she needed them for a recipe the next day. Begged. I was like, okay, got it. They're totally safe because I don't even like vanilla wafers. She kept mentioning it, and it was the first thing she asked me about when they got home. Should have gone and bought some Nilla wafers and been eating the new box when the mom came home. Story 13. On the opposite end of the spectrum, the family gave me instructions to let their kids drink chocolate milk, which they were otherwise not allowed to have. I think they wanted their kids to associate babysitter time with fun time, so the parents could go out more often. Seeming to work out well for them, the kids both grew up to be successful people. These kids I babysat a lot for when I was a teenager loved when I came over because we got to watch a movie, eat frozen pizza, mac and cheese, hot dogs, other fun foods. The daughter was a huge girly girl, and the mom was not, so I would usually paint her nails and braid her hair, and we'd watch Star Wars, so the son was thrilled. I loved babysitting for them. Story 14. I was babysitting a 3 or 4-ish-year-old girl and an 18-month-old boy. The boy had to be carried in a buggy, which is all very well, but I was supposed to add some kind of mini stairs, 2 steps on the back of it, so the girl could stand on it because her legs get tired. said the parents while making quotation marks with their fingers. The dang thing hit my legs every time I took a step. That kid was also taught to not wait and look for restrooms when she needed to go, and proceeded one time to take a crap in a public garden and wipe herself with a leaf with an ease that certified me that wasn't her first time. I had a friend who lived in the country. He grew up peeing everywhere. Story 15. I'm a professional nanny, and one of the families I worked for had a strict no games rule. Not as in video games, but as in any game that could have a winner and a loser. No board games, no tag, nothing. Winning and losing leads to hurt feelings, was their explanation. I'd have to stop the girls anytime they said something like, I bet I can get to the end of the driveway faster, and remind them, Mom and Dad say no competition, remember? Everything had to be perfectly equal, or the parents would lose it completely. I fired them as clients shortly after. I love your outlook and envy it. I wish I could fire some bosses. Story 16. When I was a kid, I got paid $75 a week to watch 2 boys over a summer. It was amazing money, but the dad was a big bow hunter, and he made loads of deer chili, and he insisted that his 10-year-old and 2-year-old sons eat it. They loved it, but the 2-year-old would take these massive, awful, horrible, nasty chili Mondo Dukes constantly. The dad explained all this to me, and my instructions were to just put him in the shower and hose him down. I was offered plenty of chili, but never ate any. As a 35-year-old man, after taking massive chili Dukes, or any other kind of Mondo Dukes, I too put myself in the shower and hosed myself down. Save the trees. Story 17. Babysat for a family that had 3 boys, 1 a newborn. I was never to feed the baby by holding it next to me, but I was to put it on my legs and make eye contact with him at all times. No cuddling. Also, I was never to let the older boys lose any game we were playing. I quit after about a month. Years later, I found out that youngest one, the baby that wasn't to be cuddled, jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. That's what happens when you have a completely emotionally distant relationship with your children. That time is so essential for development, and without human contact, our brains literally cannot develop properly. Crap like that should be prosecutable as abuse or neglect. Story 18. Only 2 hours of reading time. To be fair, the mom was a librarian, and her 2 kids were adorably nerdy. They had an entire room filled with books, and even then we'd make trips to the library from time to time. The rest of the time was supposed to be outside or doing some activity. It was a super sweet deal too, because she paid for not only her kids to have a pool pass, but me as well. So we basically went every day all summer, and we would play in the pool. I want to limit the reading time for my future kids. Come on, sweetie, you already read 3 hours today. Time for some good old TV. Story 19. The neighbor I babysat for when I was around 12 had 4 rambunctious boys. The youngest, who was probably 2 or 3, was locked in a dog crate under the kitchen counter when I arrived. She told me to leave him there until they returned, which would have been 4 or 5 hours later. I let him out immediately and called my mom, saying that I wanted to call the police because I thought she was super abusive. The crate was too small for him to stretch out in. My mom said no, and so I never did. I also never went back there. To this day, I feel guilty and wonder what else those boys endured. Story 20. I used to regularly babysit one of my younger cousins. At nap time, I had to put her in a zip-up pajama with feet. I then had to duct tape the zipper down and duct tape the wrists in a way that wasn't restricting, but she couldn't pull her hands into her onesie. If I didn't do this, she would pull her hands in and dig in her diaper, always. My aunt got tired of cleaning poop-covered walls regularly. My daughter painted a few times. I just started putting her pajamas on backwards so she couldn't reach the zipper. Story 21. Not necessarily a rule, but the first time I went to their house, they told me about their daughter's very serious peanut allergy, walked me through the EpiPen, prevention, phone numbers of their neighbors who were doctors. All fine so far. I took this very seriously. But then the mother put her hands on my shoulders and said, "If she passes away, we wouldn't blame you. It wouldn't be your fault." While I appreciate the thought, this freaked me the heck out, and I was 100 times less comfortable. Someone wanted you to off their kid. Story 22. Don't let the children play with the non-believers. They were a super Christian family that I babysat for a few times. One time the children were looking out the window at the neighbors playing, and I asked if they wanted to go outside and play. And I crap you not, this little 5-year-old looked me in the eyes and says, "We can't, they're not of God." So creepy. I wasn't asked back after I accidentally said, "Oh my gosh," one time. Apparently gosh is too close to God. Oh my glob. Story 23. Told me that under no circumstances could the kid use the restroom because he was grounded. Obviously, I ignored this. Later, it was discovered his father physically shamed and abused him. He was a prominent member of a large religious community in the town, so it shocked us. The religion of the mentioned person was an imam at a local and very popular mosque in our community. I feel like the restroom thing was enough to report to the cops at least. Story 24. One had me feed her 1-year-old only from a freshly opened baby food container. If she only ate 2 or 3 spoons, I was to throw it away, and when she wanted more in 15 minutes, I was to open a new one. I thought it was so she would finish her meal and be full for a while, but she said it was okay to feed her whenever she wanted it. I would probably throw away 5 or 6 jars in a 2-hour sitting. They cost more than I usually made for sitting. Story 25. To give him warm milk in a baby bottle right after every dinner. He was a fully functional 10-year-old boy. Yes, he was fine with it. His parents were otherwise normal, as far as I saw. The kid himself was great. His teeth seemed fine from what I can remember. Not that I really would have paid attention to that back then. But I just found him on Facebook, and it looks like he did have braces around 14 to 15 years old. That is indeed really weird. Story 26. If the kids misbehaved, I was encouraged to spank them with a paddle they had, then made them write their names on it. Another family was perfectly normal until bedtime. Then I had to give the 5-year-old girl a bottle, put her in a diaper, then cuddle with her until she falls asleep. Like I said, everything else about her and the family was normal. But at bedtime, I basically had to treat her like an infant. God, this sounds so unhealthy. Story 27. I had to put the kids to sleep with the CD player going. That wasn't the weird part. It was a recording of their parents basically going, "Molly, you are wonderful. You are a star. You're going to shine bright." That isn't super weird, but it was like several hours long, and apparently they listened to it every night. After a few hours, it changed to, "Become a ninja and honor your ancestors." Story 28. Not a babysitter, but my friend was 24, and his parents asked him to watch their house while they were gone. They left a list of rules and instructions. It was on laminated paper and looked like something for a 10-year-old. He was not allowed to answer the door, and if someone kept knocking, he was to call the cops. Oh man, at 24, I hope he was able to ignore this and answer the door. Story 29. My sister babysat and wasn't allowed to leave. The parents refused to drive her home until she did all the dishes that were there from the family before she showed up to babysit. She was ticked off, and when that same family tried to get me to babysit, they were ticked off I refused, but I'm not really a maid for your hire. You can't just make a 14-year-old clean your house because you hired them to watch your kids for an evening. That is so entitled. Wow. Story 30. My mom told me a story of when she babysat during her teenage years. She did it for this religious family whose church did not believe in television or their members watching it. She would bring a portable TV with her to watch once the kids were asleep. The parents came home and they were captivated by it. They would invite her over just so they could watch television. Story 31. I had to change the kid's cloth diaper every 2 hours on the dot. The kid was 6. I assumed it was for some sort of disability or something, but no. His parents just didn't want to potty train him, and the kid was content with being babied. I remember just making the kid put his own diaper on and encouraging him to use the bathroom if he had to go. I never went back. Story 32. No hot sauce after 9 p.m. The kid loved hot sauce, but his folks were super overprotective. Maybe they had heard of people eating too much hot sauce and throwing it up as it would not settle. Honestly, the kid was made of solid steel. He went to Taco Bell pretty much every time I babysat. I love that this became a problem. Story 33. Not allowed to serve her kid food that was heated in the microwave. Also, she never told me this until after I babysat her and berated me for it. How was I supposed to know? Guess I ruined that child. That same lady would give me a list of chores to complete too. How am I supposed to watch your kid and vacuum your house? Story 34. They asked me to spoon feed their 3-year-old. He was perfectly capable of eating by himself. Yet they fed him like that until he was 5. I also interviewed a family that had twins, and they were still sleeping in cribs at 3 years old. The mother wanted me to hand wash their socks and underwear. No thank you. Story 35. Mom was A-okay with girls aged 7 and 9 watching Grease every day, leading the girls to ask over lunch one day what a hooker was. Mom was not okay with them watching Disney's Hercules, as it centered around gods other than the one true. Story 36. The kid couldn't have dessert if she didn't finish her dinner. Problem was she was about 4 or 5, and dinner was 2 cheeseburgers and sides. She ate half of one and was okay with not getting dessert. No sweet tooth developing there, at least. Story 37. Anyway, when I was a kid, there was a mom who would only allow her kids to do art on Tuesdays. I never learned why it was only one day, or why it was Tuesday, but she totally flipped out one day when we did it on the wrong day. Story 38. Mother, our children, 6, 4, and 1, are vegetarian. Please respect that. Father, once the mother has gone upstairs. Sorry, but they are my kids too. If they want meat, it's because they probably need it. There's a fridge in my workshop. I can certainly see that marriage lasting. Story 39. Asking me to drive their 3-year-old twins around in my personal vehicle for 2.5 hours because that's the only way they can nap. No, I simply put the kids in their beds, closed the door, and they were asleep in 15 minutes. Story 40. Don't tickle the kids. Don't let them tickle each other. They were boys 8 and 10. Apparently they were getting aroused while tickling each other, and it ended in some aggressive wrestling. Oh my God. Story 41. Kindergartners couldn't watch any movie or read any book if it had a protagonist and an antagonist. That's like every movie and book. I would like to understand the reason behind this rule. Story 42. When the kids proved to me they finished their homework, their treat was 15 minutes of TV and a stick of gum. They were not to watch any more TV. That's not even a whole show. Story 43. Just let the kid be right. We believe in his achievement. He's 5 and wants to kick your lapdog around the house. No, we're doing it my way today. Babysat twice for them. Story 44. Not a rule, but a single mom once told me to use the bat by the door in the event the kid's father comes by and tries to take them. That was pretty weird and uncomfortable. Story 45. If Brady stands by the door, it just means he needs to go out. Open the door and let him back inside in a few minutes. Brady was a 4-year-old boy. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.